Ladies and gentlemen, allow us to start the group discussion. At the opening, as I mentioned, we would like to refrain from just listening to speakers. I think every intervention or interruption is welcome from the audience. I would like to make this group work or group session as interactive as possible. In this discussion, now we've been talking about augmented body. As has been mentioned, now we are going to have a follow-up session on augmented sensibility. When it comes to augmented body, the input and output are very clear, so it is easy to understand. But going forward, to what extent the body can be augmented? Rekimoto-san was talking about tactile augmentation and others. And there are going to be some kind of a combination of different elements in the process. And first, I would like to hand off the microphone and to self-introduction for Professor Mizuguchi and Professor Sugimoto. I just would like to share with you some information on the ground and what progress can we expect in 5 years' time. Would you please touch upon them, including your self-introduction, 2 or 3 minutes for each. And then we are going to have a deeper discussion. Professor Sugimoto. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I am a medical doctor and also a professor of International University of Health and Welfare. A new medical school is going to be open in Narita. It's a historic event. Now, with this regard, on this topic of augmented body, it would be too late for university students to start. So this kind of a topic should be taught at the earlier age, for example, starting from kindergarten. So starting from the undefined stage, we are talking about nursery schools. Now we are suffering from the aging of the population and the medical expenses and nursing long care nursing centers. I think the similar thing can be said about the children's nursing schools. What I would like to mention here is that we believe that our health condition is 100%, but that is not the case. Rather, prosthetic issue and prosthetic legs that are produced, and some of my friends didn't do exercise because of a lack of a prosthetic. But in 2 years' time, he started to do the exercise, and he is now being fielded in the international competitions. So we have to recognize what would happen to a health condition, not 100%. So when it comes to disease and health, we tend to believe that suffering from disease means negative, but at the same time, we have to think of preventive measures. If our mindset is changed into that our health condition is not always 100%, so prevention is extremely important in terms of medicine. And if that is the case, the medical doctors can easily respond to. For example, the cancer and the other diseases, they are intractable diseases, but there should be room for making efficiency and effectiveness. When I had a discussion over lunch, now we are always talking about the full scores, 100% when it comes to the current situation, but that definitely differs. The microorganism in the body is different, and so going forward, we will be able to change our health condition, turning to the better or turning to the worse. So starting from the current position, even in the area of health, there should be a possibility of the augmented body. For example, feces transplantation is also a very important method of solution. And for example, that the benign the feces are transplanted into the intestines of other people. So, and I think this is some of the areas that have been explored, and really the organisms, they may be eliminated by other measures. Therefore, if the baby is fed with the mouth of the parent, Now, that would be a route for contagion. And if you would be able to identify the sources of contagion, and then you will recognize what is missing in your body, and you will be able to intake things that do not exist in your own body. Now, when we start talking about self, that kind of concept of self can be enhanced. Now, as for our role as a medical doctor, that instead of dealing with each people with individual bodies, but we have to think of how they are related to other people, a family relation and societal relationship. I think the medical doctors will be able to play an important role in this area as well. So if that is the case, being in good shape or in good healthy condition is going to differ. I think the line between the medicine and the health, it is somewhat blurred. I think eating habit is also relating to that. Obesity issue is also a big issue. Like you will be able to get rid of diabetes if your obese man's the stomach is made smaller, and that will have positive impact on diabetes. So this is a new discovery. Therefore, the internal medicine doctors are also suggesting this kind of medical operation. Therefore, those who have suffered from these diseases will be able to get rid of diabetes, and then that the diabetes is gone and the new obesity is gone. So that will enable those former patients to have a better life in society. Therefore, releasing this kind of a burden from individuals is going to be an important element for augmented body. Professor Mizuguchi, gamification is something that you have been studying, and how to think, how you've been thinking of what would be the best way to enhance body. And looking into the future, would you please share with us your vision? My name is Tetsuya Mizuguchi. I have been long in the entertainment business, and more recently raised in unit. There was a big photo on that VR game entertainment piece. It was released about a year ago. In cyberspace, viruses dominate the world, and they are going to be purified by the players, like serving as white hackers, and three-dimensional, and the world without any frame. It is a huge and vast world where you live in. So you are going to purify all those viruses, and each action is going to be attached with the music, and then the music is going to be combined together, and the line would be in tune with the music. All the elements are going to be made into particles. The particles in the 3D world are going to interact or react with music, and so it is something like an equalizer. So it is going to be a chain reaction that you are going to experience, and then you will be able to see the process and evolution. Synesthesia is the co-sensing, in other words. So co-sensing, or synesthesia, in other words. S-Y-N, and aesthetic. 100 years ago, the Bauhaus artists preferred to use this term. Kandinsky, for example. Therefore, now drawing pictures based on the impression of a specific music. Therefore, this kind of co-sensing artwork is produced. Therefore, what I'm trying to pursue is to translate that in the entertainment world. This is something I have been working on. And obviously, what makes us different from the past is that there are a lot of elements involved. technological progress. For instance, each engine which is developed is going to be accelerated. The computer performance is also accelerated, and the transferring speed is also augmented, and the volume is also increased. There are a series of factors that are involved. And speaking of VR, in front of your eyes, full HD, one eye full HD, and they are combined together in order to produce a 3D world and a whole view scope.
So it's one eye full HD. You can see the dots still. However, it gives you a lot of reality. You can actually picture the world quite in a real fashion. And so we're going beyond a certain level right now, and then brain will think that it's the real world. And so experience of synesthesia, if you combine it with storytelling, maybe your emotional movements that were not the case in the past, it might emerge. Of course, we're not there yet, but for sure, maybe evolution was like this, but then it will take a big leap. We're getting there. And Dr. Rekimoto talked about suits, business suits, and synesthesia suits is what we're experimenting with. Dr. Minamizawa's haptic research lab, together with Rhizomatic, are actually working to make this suit with 26 oscillators, and each of the oscillator can actually reproduce this touch. For example, something hard to sound, or like a drum being strummed or guitar being strummed, and so this sound actually exciting the emotion of the people, and then people will no longer use words, but for sure people will be moved emotionally, and some people even cry. And this is something that, or an area that we were not able to do in the past, but I think to myself that this has finally become possible. And so in the past year or so, this has become possible. And in the past, we started with the internet, and there were major innovations in the past 2 decades or more. And as a media, innovation in the media had more to do with data transaction, but it's more about sharing of or distribution of experience. I think that experience transaction is made possible, and the amount of data is huge. And as an artwork being put together, I think before, even more than before, it takes a lot of concentration to put them together into an art form. But there is, for sure, that kind of evolution these days. Well, one thing that I would like to ask all three of you is, actually, that's the only question I would like to ask all of you, and then open to question afterwards. Now, experience being shared. We're beginning to be able to do that. And also other people's microbes can be brought inside your body. So this line between you and others, and the line between people and technology, or people with robots or AI, these lines that used to divide us, separate us, are no longer drawable. In other words, you're not able to draw a line anymore, or it's becoming more difficult. Then what about virtual versus real? Maybe that line in between will likely go away. Maybe that's the case. Well, 25 or 26 oscillators you mentioned. Half a year ago, VR goggle is what I wore, or actually I saw this video of doing that. On a swing, and then after 5 seconds, I screamed, "Let me go off this swing, the seat." I was just sitting on a chair and just experiencing that picture as if I were on that swing, and my brain thought that I was actually on this swinging, and it was not virtual anymore. For me, it was real, and I almost threw up. Actually, for 1 month after that, I felt sick. So no line between virtual and real anymore. So virtual versus real, or human beings, conscious or unconscious, or making people make decisions, or technologies making decisions. The more seamless it becomes, the intention of design becomes all the more important, is what I feel these days. Because when you give things to the technology side more and more, I would just say, I want to buy this, I wanted to experience this. And then I would experience what you, Mr. Dr. Rekimoto, experienced, and I will no longer be me. In other words, the line between me and you, there used to be this clear-cut line, but your experience becomes mine. So where does that line go between me and others, or being me and you? So maybe you cannot design anything like that. Maybe there was no such a line to begin with, but in the past, we used to just have these two sides between on both sides of the line, virtual versus real, me versus others. Maybe the line is blurring, or the line wasn't there, but I think in the 5-year period, including now, this is actually a big wave, and the way we address that will determine the way forward. Well, Dr. Rekimoto earlier talked about this first person versus third person, these different perspectives. For a long time, as for myself, I used to think that there was a definite difference. Movie is actually an expression or media of a third person. You don't know where that camera is standing. It's somewhere else, not you. But this third person perspective is what you are experiencing as a viewer. So it's a bystander. You're just bystander, and because you're a bystander, you cannot do anything about the story unfolding, and we can be moved and even cry. And games that I have been experiencing for a long time, it's really the extreme first-person experience. It's an experience, but it's not a bystander kind of experience. So in the early days, I have not been, losing in my games. But then, over the period, there were more combinations between first-person and third-person, and the games have actually evolved to be something not quite like movies, but still make people cry. And VR, is it you taking the lead, or is it passive or active? I think everything is melting, whether it is first person or third person. What you might think, or I might have thought there was a line separating the two, actually there can be a fusion of both sides, and I really can really feel that now. And I think that's really thanks to or due to technology, because of the higher resolution that is available now. What you were not able to see in the past are segmented into small pieces, and then circuits or that were not possible in the past are possible. And so then that's seen everywhere. Dr. Rekimoto, what do you think? Yes, virtual versus real. In the past, you might feel that you're experiencing something for real. If that's 100%, it was like 50 or 60%, but maybe a different axis existed. So how similar it is to reality is not the only axis of evaluation. For example, this suit that Dr. Mizuguchi talked about, it's not just reproducing something that is existing, a physical thing, but some new sense of touch with your skin. Maybe this is something different. And this feeling, this senses or sensory sensation is something that is different. But there are moments where we think that it existed from the very beginning. VR, maybe if you're afraid of heights, it's different feeling than if you were in a high place in real. However, that sense maybe existed from the beginning. And maybe the sixth sense, a new sixth sense is being developed or created, and there's no reference in reality because it doesn't exist in real life. However, we feel as though this sixth sense already existed from way back. And so something that feels like a reality. We're not trying to realize something that simulates reality, but it's different from what is in real. Okay. So is that something that makes you feel good or bad? Well, electrical stimulation might be one. Like you apply these pads that gives you these electrical sensation, and let's say you receive this sensation, and then you know there's a wall in front of you. Make that rule, and then so you do this, and then your arm will straighten like this, and then that is a sign that there's a wall, and you're so looking at this signal from a third-person perspective, but maybe somebody with this kind of skin, and then if this happens, I should go this way. If there were whiskers like cats, it would be following the actions of the whiskers. So it's just like VR. You feel as though that sense of yours was with you from the very beginning of life. But that's not real, but it's not virtual either.
Prosthetic legs and arms, they have been developed with my support. And there are those persons without arms, but they have the virtual sense that they feel pain even without the arms. And this is called imaginary pain. And the VR is now being used in order to eliminate such pain. And therefore, pain is a situation, a condition, and that kind of signal is to be provided, and then the situation improves. That in NATO's work program, which I participated in, that if the brain can send a signal onto the arm and to work, and then in this way, that you will be able to have a virtual arm that will be able to grasp something, and the brain will accordingly send a signal. And then in this way, the patient will be able to feel that his imaginary arm or a hand grasps something. So by doing so, and by this kind of training, a neurorehabilitation program, with this kind of program in place, the patient can work and improve better. This kind of sense can be created anew. VR and AR, the MR, this is the area where I've been studying, and something very interesting is taking place. The sense or tactile feeling. This is something related to the recognition by the brain, and how to translate that into action. And in the process, there is memory. So memorization is for one thing, and the remembering is also another thing. As Hayashi was talking about that uncomfortable situation when you're in the seesaw, and then how it's going to be embedded in the brain as a memory. And that differs depending on the individual. The training, for example, that operation training, and so that interns are being trained with this kind of video. And then if they know how to do it, that is okay. But if that the trainee is going to be trained, how is it going to be actually done, then that would give a better situation for them. And so practice is important in addition to memory. Therefore, how is that kind of experience is going to be embedded in the memory is going to be extremely important. As has been mentioned, as has been said, like the hitting clicking on the table, you can tell how hard the surface is. The sound, and this is going to create a dent. And then not only the visual situation, but also the tactile situation can also be grasped in this way. Now, with regard to 3D printing experiment, and for example, in the case of a plastic, this kind of a leather sheet texture, smoothness on the surface, but made of plastic. But if you're going to close your eyes and touch it, you can feel the texture of leather. Therefore, tactile sensor is not very sensitive. Therefore, if you have an experience of touching something, then the brain misunderstands that it is the same quality and the same texture. The smartphone, the casings, and the fabric is made new that has a similar texture of the genes. So there are no tactile sensors and no technology as such. However, if you're going to look at that, you can tell how it feels by touching it. That is because of your eyes and the robot arms, and to what extent it is going to a dent is going to be generated, and then how the light is going to be reflected as a result. So you, only with your eyes, you can tell the tactile feeling. The tactile sensor, without it, you can still. Your brain can remember and memorize how it is, and then it would tell that how hard a specific element is, or for example, the artery is. The human senses are not everything. How it's going to be memorized in the brain, and how it's going to be communicated. So it doesn't really matter whether actual object does exist or not. Virtual reality and different kinds of virtual reality programs. For example, EAR, XR, extended reality. This is a fetish term in the United States. Now, when we start talking about the reality, it does not belong to the reality. Instead of reality, it should be actuality. Actuality means an object that clearly exists right there. And then how the meaning is going to be attached to that object. For example, think of glass and glass. If it is not filled with water, it is not anymore a glass. With the water, it is glass. Teacup, it is teacup with the tea. That's something Bruce Lee was talking about. So this is a signboard of Maki Sugimoto because it is placed on the desk. If it is just left in a toilet, it is not a signboard. So how you recognize and how to evaluate the signboard is going to be something very important. And this is a new way to add value to something. So only with just one question, we have spent half of the time. Now the floor is open for questions. Or comments, whatever is welcome. I wonder if the microphone is available. Please. Well, you can identify yourself. If you don't, that's okay. Mine is Utsunomiya, working at a company called Pokemon Incorporated. I have a couple of questions. Now, augmentation is believed to mean progress. But speaking of human bodies, in the evolution, there are those functions that are deemed unnecessary or unused compared to the humans in the past that we were able to live in a comfortable environment. Whether we do have such unnecessary elements or functions, by reducing something or some function, it would enable us to live more comfortably. What do you think of that? Well, we would like to take one or two more questions before the panel responds to the questions. Professor Tomita, anything to add? Or intestinal, the microorganisms. Now, microorganisms in the intestines. Well, the feces, the treatment, I think, is it also effective for allergy treatment? Something different, a different topic from the rich augmented body. When there is a child birth, whether it is naturally born or is it going to be cesarean operation or not, I think there are some cases in which allergic situation may change depending on the method of operation. So cesarean operation, that if the microorganisms in the mother's intestines can be implanted, and then the baby will be able to digest them. So even in the infant stage, that could be possible. But what about in the adulthood? Is it this kind of method is it still viable? What about this question? You will be able to have your approach completely changed. Thank you very much for a very good question. With regard to enteric bacteria, I think 100 trillion bacteria do exist. So 3 times the number of cells, 1.5 kilograms in weight. So I think it could be considered as one organ. It would have a lot of impact, different influence. For example, that the constipation, diabetes, and allergy. And what about the change of the character? I think it would have a positive and negative impact on the personality. And then it is often talked about that is obesity, that the mouse obese mouse, and if there is an injection that would prevent further obesity. There are over 100 bacteria types, but thanks to all the medical researchers, it is a big data. As a matter of fact, there is a widespread research underway. As has been mentioned, that enteric bacteria can be transplanted into the children, then through the vagina, and then so it is somewhat difficult to transfer bacteria from mother into a child. For example, this is in fact this kind of trial is underway. With regard to transportation of feces, it is a liquid type which is going to be injected. That is a huge obstacle. And so at Keio University, this has been done at the clinical stage, and it can be formed in a capsule, and so that it could be digested in the stomach. That is being tried. So personalized probiotic and supplement, and then these tablets are to be taken for the 2 months.
Yes, precise medicine that is being developed in the United States is what it is. DNA is analyzed on a personal level, and then you will have better understanding of the specific bacteria. It's not just about bacteria, amoeba and others. And so you will do an analysis so that there will be a tailor-made set that is applied later in a precise manner. So going back to the original question, like it was just mentioned, bacteria from other people are added. So it's an addition, and addition is considered as a progress or evolution. Is that really good? Is the first person's question. But what about not augmentation but restriction or suppression? Maybe there are benefits to reducing rather than adding. And I thought that was really a good question. Good question to the two of you here. Yes. Augmentation. is a convolution in a way. Augmentation, convolution, laying things on top of each other. So the three basic colors of the light and a color are different, but they're different, and it could be totally black. Actually, lights can be added, but no subtraction. But sound, you can do subtraction. If you apply sounds of different wavelengths, you can change or cancel out the sound by noise canceller. So it's like data convolution or layering multiple things on top of each other, and then that might lead to subtraction. So our capabilities may not be 100%, and then maybe there are some gaps, and that it might be a negative thing, but for some people it might be a positive thing. For example, smelling capability of dogs is very strong, but maybe it's too smelly. You don't want to smell. It's too smelly. So right now, you do addition. Hopefully, we can do both addition and subtraction. Okay. Yes, augmentation. In a way, this is a rough selection of word, I would say. There are certain values, and you might add what is good, but maybe you're just adding for the sake of adding. Humans are complex systems, so it's not so clear what adding or addition might bring about. You think it's for the better, but then you might make things go bad. So maybe adding something is not necessarily good. In biology, evolution is not used, but succession. Evolution might suggest that you're getting closer to the goal or the objective. And so succession is just a succeeding or changing or transmutation. So we're just changing in that sense, not evolving necessarily. And another thing is regression that you don't want might happen. In other words, undesired regression might be there. For example, thanks to smartphones, when people have no longer the capability of remembering things, and so that's a regression, although you didn't expect that or you didn't want that to happen. So there might be some negative phenomena that would occur as a result of something being added. Okay. Once functions or functionalities are improved, maybe humans' physical capabilities will go down. Well, if you no longer can remember people's cell phone numbers, that doesn't really trouble us so much. If the machine can remember the number for you, that should be okay, no? Well, we're maybe using our brain power to other things. But then the question is, what do you use your brain for? You have the augmentation, you can experience other people's experiences. So what do us humans spend time on? Well, this capsule of the enterobacteria, if President Trump takes that capsule, maybe the level of peace in the world might change, or maybe change for the worse or for the better, I don't know. But let's say, okay, on a desire basis, let's say you have Maslow's pyramid of desires, and once you climb up, you may think that you don't come down, but that could happen if there's a major earthquake that actually creates a place where people don't have air or water. It's faster going up the pyramid, and it's quick to reach the top, and you know that. But then, how to activate anew, once again, is the question. And we're doing this over and over, mentally as well as physically in our life. And at the end of the day, of course, the important thing is how we can feel happy in our lives. And Mr. Nanjo talked about justice, and I could really understand that, identify with that, because justice might mean justice for you, but maybe for the other person on the other end, it might be the reverse of justice. So injustice might be the case for that other person. So it's like a vice versa relationship. Something that is aesthetic in nature, something that makes us feel good or happy, that is something absolute, maybe. At least I feel that way. Mr. Kitano, in his presentation, said that human functions or sensory systems, there are multiple layers, and there are layers where augmentation is easier than others. And swing. 2 seconds and you're sick already. But Mr. Keiyahara in the morning talked about this Nyuto hot spring video. Did you see that video of the hot spring in Akita Prefecture? And even if you see that picture virtually, I don't think you will be able to relax as if you were in the real hot spring bathtub. So there are things that you try very hard, and yet there are things that cannot be augmented full enough. Yes, I understand what you're trying to say. Dr. Sugimoto, you might say actually you say that because you've been in a hot spring before. And those people who don't know what hot spring feels like might be satisfied with virtual images. And if the people who have experienced hot spring recommends that people actually experience it, they might do it. And then the goggles, wearing that, and seeing people wearing goggles, people might laugh, but those are the people who haven't experienced wearing goggles. And that used to be the case with umbrellas in London. When umbrellas were first invented, people laughed at people putting up umbrellas. So it's a matter of whether you have experienced it or not. It's the same with umbrellas or goggles. Okay, so things that you haven't experienced, it's difficult to augment. No, I'm not saying that. Augmentation is possible fully. And then maybe you can actually embed this feeling of cold sensation of being in a hot spring bath. And but then if you have this very good sensation in your memory, then it becomes a very good thing. And then you think, okay, what about jacuzzi? And add that on top of the experience of being in a hot spring. Now, justice is not so clear. However, let's discuss together is the next step. In other words, when we talk about census of people, it's not something that we should just be looking at alone. It's important that you have other people's perspectives. And that's another layer that can be added on. Okay, so good for whom? I think that's the most difficult, and that was the message in the opening, and also that relates the sessions following. And so what is good for the individual and what is good for everybody, and the link between these two is important that we have to discuss it. Okay, we have to close this session. Can we spend a little more time? I saw this sign saying 5 more minutes. 5 more minutes, okay. So we're reaching the end of the session. So maybe I'd like to ask the 3 people as to your future challenges, what value sets you want to change, what you want to do differently, whatever, or any question that you might want to pose at the end of the session. But one last word from all 3 of you. Who can go first? Okay. In the opening, Dr. Hayashi said something that shocked me. When you think something like this, he says that there are values that are unchanged. So let's change that, is what he said. Yes, the answer that I brought is maybe it's unchanged that there are things that cannot be satisfied fully, but that was rejected. So once that is rejected, okay, the joy of being able to play the piano and the robot playing the piano for you, maybe that joy gets it's the same level, and I cannot really ruin that notion yet. So as an animal-like emotion, this is deep-rooted, and maybe things that are changed as a result of emergence of technology, maybe these very fundamental or primitive feelings like happiness or feeling good will no longer change. But if that emotion or senses can be actually changed, that would be quite interesting. That we're not there yet, but maybe something fundamental might occur as a change. And Mr. Hayashi suggested that, yes, everybody will be sobered as a result of this, and I was happy to see that. Okay, let's deepen that discussion next.
Probably the synesthesia. In reality, something that never happens in reality. And this is something we are going to continue to create in the world of entertainment, for example. At the end of the day, what I would like to pursue as a goal is that what is an experience, a moving experience? And this is something I would like to pursue. Mizuguchi-san, can I ask one very specific question? The tactile experience, or that will be very moving. And if you will be able to find a woman in the virtual reality, which will be better? Women in the virtual reality or in the reality? That, of course, there are those men and women who do not want to select the partners in their life, but the heart-moving experience that is given by a virtual reality person, and if it resonates with your character, and then sometimes you quarrel with that person. So how do you find her? Is that something that you would like to pursue? I think there are two possibilities. Well, there should be people who would like to have both. The real body person will be pursued by someone, and in some other cases, and a difference. And so maybe there could be a difference between young and old. So both. Are you going to study further that area? Well, now it is not only a matter of men and women. Indirectly, maybe I will be engaged in that kind of work or area, but going forward in a longer range, I think this is not something that could be rejected. More, it is feasible to a certain extent. In the coming 10 years, I think. Well, in the past, for example, in the year 2000, that we didn't foresee what would happen in the future. But these days, we can predict how the future is going to be, at least the near future. For example, into 10 years, I can tell, as far as my world is concerned, I can tell the future direction. I think by senses, for example, the ears and the eyes and tactile senses, are going to be superseded by the technologies. For example, there are restrictions when it comes to eyesight, but as for the augmented VR, this is going to be a tool that will be able to give quasi-reality. Therefore, it is not only a matter of resolution. Probably more aspect is going to be given in the area of aesthetic area. So that kind of world is going to be enhanced going forward. This is one possibility I can predict. Thank you very much, Professor Sugimoto. There's only 1 minute left. Summarization. 3K was used. 8K was used for the surgical operation, and I was thinking of this operation, and then you will be able to predict how much that the organism could be incised. So this means that something more than eyesight is given to us. That with the 8K, we have been given more abilities. For example, the bone vibration, and then the brain then can have something different that is in memory. It's stored in memory. Therefore, we'll be able to get new things across the borders. Well, this is related to health and non-health border as well. Now, something about going forward into the 10 years. I think everybody is going into cure diseases. The industry 4.0 is a faddish term. We are talking about the virtual world and real world is going to be combined. So on an individual basis, there are those things that those individuals consider boundaries, but we can go over them, beyond them. It is the same case with the medicine. There are those things that can be done out of the hospital, and that same thing can be said with diseases. in 5 or 10 years' time this is going to be put into reality. Well, if you're going to have another 30 minutes, we will be able to have a discussion over how human beings are going to design death. But that would put us in a very difficult situation, and we're going to be late for the next session, so because I would like to bring this session to a close.